Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Bureau of Justice Statistics Interactive Dashboards, hosted by the Bureau of Justice Statistics. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce George Abo Brown, statistician within BJS, for welcome remarks and to begin the presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. I'm super excited about today. Today is the first in a new series of webinars that BJS will be doing basically every quarter. So subscribe to our Justice Stats page, follow us on all social media outlets to look out for announcements for future broadcasts. So today's webinar will be going over some of our recently developed data dashboards. It's super exciting about these. A lot of these are new and very innovative and just different ways for BJS to get our data out to the general public. Anyone really interested in the numbers that we have. It's publicly accessible, so all these dashboards are available on our website. And the goal today is essentially just to show you guys, introduce you guys to these dashboards and show you guys how to utilize them and reach out to us as a resource in the future for any questions or anything like that. So for today's presentation, I'll kick it off. I'll be talking about the Federal Criminal Case Processing Statistics tool. And then I'll be followed by my colleague, Shelby. She'll be going over JEET, or the Justice Expenditure and Employment tool. That'll be followed by Danielle. She's a statistician in our Jail and Community Corrections unit. And she'll be going over our Correction Statistical Analysis tool, or CSAT. She'll be followed by Lexi, who's part of our Victimization Statistics unit. And she'll be going over the National Crime Victimization Survey Data Dashboard, or NDASH for short. And last but certainly not least, Lauren Beatty should be going over the Survey of Prison Inmates Data Analysis Tool, or SPIDAT. So my goal for the end of this is for all these acronyms and all of our names to be familiar, so you guys will know how to use our data dashboards and also know us. So if you have any questions, reach out to us and follow up any questions. Like Daryl mentioned, there'll be a chat feature open. So if you have any questions, send them to the through the chat, and we'll try to address them if we have enough time. But if not, definitely reach out to us, and we'll have an email provided at the end for how to do that. So for me to get into my dashboard here, okay, so this is my presentation. So I'll be going over the Federal Criminal Processing Statistics tool, or FCCPS for short. But before I do that, I would like to basically introduce you all to BJS. So BJS is a primary statistical agency for the Department of Justice. And our primary mission is to collect, analyze, publish, and disseminate information on crime, criminal offenders, victims of crime, and operations of the justice system at all levels. My particular portfolio actually is examining the state level. So I'm the statistician or the project manager for the census of state prosecutors, census of state courts. But today I'll actually be talking about the federal system. We're probably best known for our National Crime Victimization Survey, but our areas of topics actually expand a lot, and a lot of our dashboards will hit on many of those areas. So again, I'll be focusing on the federal system for my presentation. So the Federal Justice Statistics Program has been with BJS for quite a while. And this system is very cool because we actually receive data from other federal criminal justice agencies. So essentially, they collect the data, and we're the warehouse for that data. And the agencies that provide us the data is the U.S. Marshals Service, the DEA, the Administrative or Executive Office of the U.S. Attorneys, the Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and the U.S. Sentencing Commission. What's really cool about this data set is that we're able to follow defendant from arrest through corrections, through our dyad link file. And I definitely have to give a shout out to our FJSP guru, Mark Motivans, who is kind of the brains behind this operation, has been doing this for quite some time, and is the one who makes all of this go well. So specifically talking about our data dashboard, it's referred to as the Federal Criminal Case Processing Statistics tool. Like I said, I'll refer to as FCCPS for short. It allows users to examine various aspects of the federal criminal justice system. It's an interactive web tool, so I'll show you some screenshots today of how it works, but you're able to jump in the data, play with it. It's public facing, all PII is removed, so you're actually able to jump in with the data. There's no data security issues with that. You're also able to download it and access it on your own computer as well. A lot of times I'll probably make a mistake and refer to as a new tool, but it's actually been in existence for quite some time. So the old FCCPS tool was on a very more clunky and slower platform, and allowed you to look at, raw numbers, but it didn't really allow you to jump in and play with the data and see any data visualization. So this last year, I think it was November, we launched this new tool and utilizes Tableau as our data software program that allows people to jump in and see data visualizations of what's going on. And the underlying tool, the underlying data of the tool is the FJSP program that I discussed on the previous slide. So the next slide discusses basically what's inside of the tool. So in the tool, we focus on the three main stages of the criminal justice system, and that's law enforcement. So we'll look at, the agency that made the arrest, information on the defendant that was arrested, and kind of some of those like early preliminary stuff. That's followed by the prosecution and courts, which looks at that court system. So we look at like the charges that are filed, sentences that are imposed, and that's the data that was, given to us by the United States Sentencing Commission and the courts and the U.S. District Attorneys Association. And then incarceration. So that's information on those who are in federal prison. And also a very cool feature about this is that you're able to actually examine the data if you know the federal statute. So if you know the specific United States Criminal Code, you can actually analyze the data through that. So I'll go over a few screenshots of the tool. And again, this is just kind of a general overview to give you guys just a main gist of how it's utilized. So if you go to this page, you're actually able to access it from our main website. This is a landing page of our FCCPS data dashboard. We try to make it very, very user-friendly. So this first page has a lot of information about the dashboard. So it talks about the data that's being captured. It talks about, all the main dashboards. So the three stages are right here. And if you select, so if you see at the top, it says law enforcement, prosecution, courts, and incarceration. If you select any of those tabs will get you right to the dashboard. Next, the United States Criminal Code that I spoke about. And the tab after that is supporting materials. The supporting materials tab is really cool. It allows you to see, a quick user guide. So you're able to download a PDF of just a short, maybe 1 or 2 page explanation of how to utilize the dashboard. And then there's a more detailed user guide. It's several pages, but it includes a lot more detail on like the data source and whatnot that's being examined. And then a terms and definitions PDF that you're also able to download as well. And last but not least, you're able to download the results. So I have a slide, and then I'll talk about downloading the results. But if you run something really cool and you want to either capture the data or a screenshot of it, you're actually able to do that through that download feature right there. Okay. So again, we try to make this super user-friendly. And one of the ways we did that is try to get as much information on the dashboard as we can. So on this previous slide here, you'll see that there's pluses and minuses under law enforcement, like a person's and investigations initiated. If you hit that plus, it'll expand to information, and it'll give you like the data source and different background information of what that data is there. So if you're really interested in the federal system, you know how to use it, great. And if you don't, you should be able to pick up enough information from those drop downs there that will give you that information. There's 9 different cohorts within each stage, and I'll kind of go over that throughout today's presentation. So this is the landing page for the law enforcement tab. So you go to the home page, you select the law enforcement dashboard. This is the first page that you'll go onto. One thing that you'll note is that you're able to see all of the variables. So if you hit select variable here, it'd be a drop-down menu with a number of different variables that you can use to analyze the data, and then you apply a filter. It's automatically filtered from the year range that the data is pre-populated in. So the data range is 1998 to 2022. But you're able to, maybe if you want to select a specific year or a different range, you can change it over there. And then right here to the right is the data dashboard that's first generated, generated from whatever you are frequency. Another thing that you note is that, like I said earlier, that it's a new tool. It's improved from the old tool, but you're actually able to view the same thing that you saw in the old tool by utilizing the classic view. So when you first go to our dashboard, it automatically takes you to the advanced view, and that's our newest dashboard with all the bells and whistles. So it has a lot of data visualizations. It has a lot of filters that can be applied. And this is probably the one that, I mean, I'm a little bit biased because I helped create this tool. And as you see here, the capabilities are much larger in the advanced view versus the classic view. The classic view also is super interested. We just want those raw numbers. But this description there again is if you were to hit the exact language right here is what view is right for me. So under advanced classic view, hit what view is right for me, information will be populated. And you're able to select if you want to do the classic view, you just hit classic and the data will be analyzed that way. So looking at the advanced view, you're able to apply multiple filters on top of filters. So first, if you're able, here's the drop down for the law enforcement tab. So we have defendants, the year of the arrest, the age of the defendant, sex, race, citizen status, arresting agency, and offense category information. So you're actually able to apply any of these variables, and also have them as individual filters to slice and dice the data any way that you see fit. The data is applied and updated as filters are applied. So as you update the filters, the data will be applied and changed from there. One thing I wanted to point out here is that you're able to review the data by sorting it any way that's most useful to you. So for example, if you're looking at persons arrested and booked, it's pre-populated to be sorted by the severity of the offense. So violent offense at the top, and then we have material witnesses at the bottom. But if you wanted like a head count of how many arrests occurred during this time period, or how many people were arrested and booked for a certain offense, you could actually go to the top and sort by highest to lowest count. So then this is sorted by highest account, and then you can easily see that immigration offenses were the highest arrests and booked for defendants who were arrested from 1998 to 2022. So then under that, so again, this is just kind of just screenshots of how the dashboard looks. Under that, so this is all on the same page. If you scroll down, you see a number of different data visualizations. But first, the line graph, which allows you to quickly and easily see different trends. So for example, you can see here, it looks like in 2017, persons arrested in the book were the highest during the time period that we have examined, and then it drops down pretty sharply after that. One thing I'll note is as you're scrolling through this, if there's a live dashboard, once you scroll through one of those points, it actually highlight the year and the data, so tell you the raw number that is actually being examined for the time period that you're interested in. The next is a bar graph. So right next to it is a bar graph, which easily depicts, if you want to look at different changes between the variables, you can tell easily which variable had the most number of counts. So for example, for immigration offenses, you can see that they're much higher than drug offenses and supervision violations, and you can again sort that data to whichever way you see fit. So again, just different ways to view the data that's being analyzed and filtered at the top feature. The next is a multi-line graph. The multi-line graph allows you to see individual differences among the variables. For example, if you want to see how one variable differed during the time period, you would look at, for example, immigration offenses. You see here, you'd utilize the offense key right here to see which variables are going with different figures in the legend. And you see here that immigration offenses really skyrocketed from 2006 all the way to 2014. There's a little bit of a drop, and then really shot up from 2016 to basically about 2020. So again, it allows you to see individual differences by variables. Next is a heat map. So this would be the bottom of the dashboard. And a heat map is great for intersectionality. Allows you to see easily how two variables kind of intersexual connect with each other. So one of the ways of determining that, for example, so this is looking at persons arrested and booked. And you can see here you can easily see here that defendants who were ages 25 to 29, who were white, had the highest amount of arrests and booked during this time period. And then again, they're able to change, if you wanted to examine something else, you could simply change the filters right here, and it would change what you're assessing. This is a view of the classic view. So this is the classic view, again, shows you those raw numbers. There's not any data visualizations, but the information's all there, and this is super, super useful if we just wanted raw numbers and the counts there. And again, you're able to apply as many filters as you'd like at the top there. So the same features, just without as many data visualization techniques. And the last feature here is the United States Criminal Code. So if you wanted to examine the data off of the United States statute, so if you knew the exact offense, you're able to select that here, and the data will be populated all throughout there. You're able to see that, and you're also able to change the year. So it's already on this example, it's 1994 to 2022. But if you're interested in a different time period, you essentially just change the year in that right-hand corner. And also another cool feature is if you see there, it says the United States names of the codes to click here. So if you wanted to know the exact criminal code, so if you know the offense, but you don't actually know the United States criminal code, if you hit that select here feature, it'd take you to a different website that will allow you to examine different offenses, and you can essentially see what code it was. So for example, if you're interested in forgery and you're interested in forgery, but you don't know the United States code, use that resource to figure out what the code is to examine the data. And then the last feature is you'll be able to download all the data. So if you were interested in running a query and you see the results and you wanted to capture this data and do your own analysis of it, you can actually download it as a CSV file. So CSV file will then allow you to put into SPSS or R or whatever you wanted to do to examine the data. But if you also want to do a screenshot of a data dashboard, then you would do a PDF or PNG, and that would essentially do a screenshot of the data that you're looking at and of the dashboard that you're looking at, and you could then save it to your own drive and use it for future reference. So that is my presentation. For now, I will pass it on to Shelby, and she will be going over JEET. And again, questions for me will be saved for the end. Thank you.
All right, let me just get all of my stuff moving around. All right, so I'm Shelby. I'm going to be talking today about the Justice Expenditure and Employment Data Tool, or we call it the JEET. I am a statistician with the Reentry, Recidivism, and Special Projects Unit at BJS. So just to start, the Justice Expenditure and Employment Extract Series, or the JEE as I'll refer to it, provides annual estimates of government expenditures and employment data for 3 different justice categories. So police protection, judicial and legal, and then corrections. Previously, these data were released as static CSV tables on the BJS website, but in 2022, these data were made available as an interactive web tool. So first, I'm going to go through kind of the details of the underlying data set, and then I'll move on to a demonstration of the tool itself. So in the police protection category, this includes all activities related to the police, sheriffs, or other governmental departments that preserve law and order. So this category can also include things like the cost of investigations, temporary holding cells, medical examiners, or traffic enforcement. The judicial and legal category covers everything associated with courts. So this can include civil or criminal courts, court reporters or bailiffs, fees paid to court-appointed counsel, or contributions to legal aid societies. The corrections category is divided into 2 subcategories, institutions and then other corrections. The institutions category includes anything related to confinement or corrections. So this includes prisons and jails, boot camps, or treatment facilities. The other corrections category includes anything outside of that. And so that can include anything like central administration, staff training, or community corrections. The JEE series also collects data on various levels of government. So this includes the federal government, all state governments, and then a selection of counties and cities that meet these population thresholds. Data for these different levels of government are collected from a few different sources. So federal expenditures or the federal data are collected from the Office of Management and Budget, the Office of Personnel Management, or usaspending.gov. State expenditure information comes directly from the state's central accounting systems, and then a sample of counties and cities provide expenditure data via a survey each year, which is then used to provide estimates for all counties and cities that meet the population thresholds. The states and then all sampled counties and cities also provide employment and payroll information via an online web collection. Every 5 years, a full census of governments is conducted to collect expenditure and employment and payroll information for all states and then the counties and cities that meet those population thresholds. The expenditure data is divided into a few levels of detail. So we have total expenditures, which includes all of the money paid out by a government during its fiscal year. This can be split into direct expenditures and intergovernmental expenditures, or money paid to other governments. And then direct expenditures can be further divided into direct current, which includes all salaries and wages, and capital outlay, which are expenditures for construction, equipment, or the purchase of land or structures. The employment data provided by the series includes all people employed by a government, so either full-time or part-time employees. And then payroll information is collected for the pay period, including March 12th, and then that's converted to a monthly value for each government. Only for the police protection category, the JEE series includes information on the number of sworn and non-sworn employees within a government. And so sworn employees are those with the power of arrest, while non-sworn employees do not have that power. All right, now to go to the tool itself. All right. So on the JEET homepage, you can see 4 different quadrants that direct you to different dashboards for analysis. So the top left quadrant is the overview of national level JEET data, and it contains a map of the United States. The top right quadrant shows state level JEET data and provides information about state governments and aggregated estimates for all local governments within a state. The bottom left quadrant is where you can navigate to large county governments, and then the bottom right is where you can navigate to large city governments. You can also navigate to one of those 4 dashboards by clicking on the tabs at the top of the page. So first we'll go to the National Overview page. On this page, each state in the map is represented by a hexagon and is labeled with its postal abbreviation. At the top of the dashboard, there's a couple of different drop-down menus where you can make selections about what data you want displayed. So this drop-down on the far left gives you options for the different type of criminal justice function. So either total justice or those 3 categories I talked about earlier: corrections, judicial and legal, or police protection. This next menu lets you select the type of data you want to view, so either expenditures, employees, or pay data. And then this next option allows you to select the way that you want that data displayed. So either as a total value or as a calculated metric. So if we have expenditure data displayed, the options are total or per capita. If you select the employees dropdown, notice that the color of the map changes, and then your options are total or the value per 10,000 residents in a state. And then for the pay option, you can either select total pay or average pay. Then you can also select the year that you want to view data for. So right now we have options 2016 through 2019. And then you can also select the type of government that you want, or the level of government that you want to view. So either state and local combined, state only, or local only. And the local option here includes counties and cities. Down here on the far right, you can see a box that gives you a summary of the data that's currently on the dashboard. So then next we can go to the state data page. On this page, there are 3 tabs that allow you to select the type of data that you want to view. You can select a single state from this drop-down menu on the far left, the year that you're interested in viewing, and then again, you can see those options for either total or the calculated metric. The first section of the dashboard gives you several rankings for that state out of the 50 states and Washington, D.C. And then below that ranking, or those rankings, are the different graphs that display a variety of information about the state and local governments, the 3 types of justice functions, and then the values over time. So if we wanted to look at California and we wanted to look at the employee data, We can see down here on the graphs that we'll see the number of employees split up by criminal justice function and government level on the top row. And then down on the bottom, you can see numbers for the the data split by employment type, sworn versus unsworn for the police protection category, and then total numbers for these different levels of governments. And if you hover over these bars, they'll give you more specific data. Next, we can go to the county data tab. This section of the JEET displays statistics for all of the counties within a state that have a population of 500,000 or more. So in this case, we can see, or we can choose maybe a different state. We can maybe look at Illinois. And again, you can choose the type of data that you want to display up on the top. So if we wanted to look at pay data this time for Illinois in 2019, we could either select all of the counties in Illinois over a population of 500,000, or you can select specific counties here. And we also have those same options for how to provide the data, so either as a total or a calculated metric. And you can see here that Cook County in Illinois has the highest values over time, but we can click on average and then standardize that across the different counties. Below the time series graph, there are different bar graphs for each of the counties in this state that show the pay amounts by the type of justice function on the left, and then by full-time or part-time employment status here on the right. So then the last page is the city data tab. And this one functions pretty similarly to the county data. So again, you'll select the type of data you want to view here on these tabs up top. And then this displays statistics for all the city governments within the state that have populations greater than 200,000. So we can look at a different state. So if we want to select Colorado, you can see that in Colorado, Denver, Aurora, and Colorado Springs were the only cities with a population above 2,000 or 200,000 in 2019. And we can see again that you can switch between the totals and per capita metrics if we were looking at expenditure data here. And then you can scroll down, and for each of the cities that meets that population threshold, you'll have data split by criminal justice function here on the left. And then now, because we're looking at expenditure data, we can see it divided by expenditure type. So these are direct expenditures versus other capital outlays and construction. The last tab here at the top is the resources page. So this brings you to a new page that provides more information about all of the data that's on the JEET and the JEE series, and then also provides information about the limitations of the data itself and the tool, and a list of definitions. So there are different links throughout this page that you can click on to get more information about the underlying data. And then it'll bring you back to the JEET dashboard as well. So if I stop sharing my screen now. We also, on our website, have a full walkthrough of the JEET tool, which goes into more detail than what I just provided about each of the different pages, and then the information that's provided on each of those pages. And then next up for the JEET, we are focusing right now on updating the JEET with new years of data. We're also working on creating more how-to videos to explain the tool's different functionality and kind of the different options that you have for working with the data on the tool. And then we're also working on modifying the tool to accommodate historical data. So that will hopefully go back to 1982 to provide just more data than just the 2016 to 2019 range that we have right now. And so that is the end of my presentation, and I will pass it off to Danielle.
Thank you, Shelby. My name is Danielle Cable. I'm a statistician with the Bureau of Justice Statistics, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about our prisoners data analysis tool. So before diving into the tool, I did want to take a minute to kind of discuss a little bit of the data that is behind the tool. At BJS, we have two major annual prison programs, the National Prisoner Statistics Program and the National Corrections Reporting Program. And after that, I will do a little walkthrough of the tool to see the data and how easy it is to download and analyze. So looking at the National Prisoner Statistics Program, or NPS, this data is an annual collection that is kind of a short survey that collects data aggregated at the state level. And then this data is summarized and annually put into the report Prisoners in each year. That has been statistical tables recently with a lot of information. This is the nation's prison population by year. This started data collection in 1925, so we have a lot of historical data with this collection. The NPS collects data from each state's Department of Corrections as well as the Federal Bureau of Prisons. This is the source for many of BJS's national prisoners estimates. These population questions that are asked include custody population, jurisdictional population, and then custody and private prisons, as well as looking at different admission and release questions. For the National Prisoner Statistics Program, we're focusing on offenders with sentences greater than 1 year. The second annual collection that we have is the National Corrections Reporting Program. And this is a much more detailed collection where we're looking at individual level administrative data that's collected from each of the state DOCs as well. Each record is going to include demographic information. We'll look at conviction offenses, sentence lengths, minimum time to be served, maximum sentence lengths, as addition to many other characteristics and descriptive statistics. For this collection, we collect 5 different records from each state, including an admission, a release record during the year, a snapshot December 31st population, and then we also ask for any information the states have on post-custody community supervision records. The NPS and the NCRP totals can be different occasionally. And these are due to some different definitional differences, like NCRP is requesting data on all admissions, while NPS is requesting data for offenders with greater than 1 year. We're looking at different timelines, so states are compiling the data at different times, and as well as different methodologies employed for submitting aggregated data versus individual level data. And a lot of that can be found, a lot of information on both of these collections can be found in the resources section of our tool. So previously, BJS had a tool available, but it only included information from the National Prisoner Statistics Program, that NPS aggregated data. With this enhanced tool, we've been able to combine data from both NPS and NCRP. So a little note on methodology is that different sections of the tool will have either data from only NPS, from only the NCRP, or occasionally a weighted descriptive variable where we take the total from NPS and use the distributions reported in NCRP. Here we have the links to where this can be found. I think that's also in the chat right now. All of the BJS tools are conveniently in similar locations, and you'll just be able to click through and find each of these tools. Also kind of nice, as we've been developing these tools, they tend to look a little bit the same, so hopefully the usability is also easy going from different collections. As we look here across the top on tabs, we have the home where you can go through and click on any of the pictures to get to each of these tabs. I'll quickly walk through each of these tabs. We have frequently requested figures, and then quick tables, which are just downloadable Excel CSV file tables. There's a map query, and then an advanced query where you can really build your own data sets and dig into data if you have specific questions. And once again, always there's a resource tab where you can look at methodologies into each of these collections as well as the building of the tool. Starting with frequently requested figures, we've compiled a couple different figures here to just give a snapshot of some of the data available. When looking at the titles of these figures, you'll see things like prison admissions, prison releases, and then as you go down, you'll see state prisons only. So for each of these figures that have state prison only, that data is going to come only from the NCRP. Couple examples of this. This is the jurisdiction population over time. This is being taken from NPS. And with this little I next to the total, you'll be able to hover over that and see exactly which data this is coming from for any of the tables or figures that you see in this tool. Each of these bars are clickable to see totals by year, and then this is separated from state prison population to federal prison population. Another example here, looking at prison releases. This is also coming from the National Prisoner Statistics Program. And looking at these three bars, for each of these figures, you'll be able to download either a vector image, a JPEG image, or the CSV, the data behind each of these figures. Moving on to that next tab, we have quick tables. And for anyone who's used the previous prisoners tool, this will look very similar. We wanted to make a lot of the usability seem pretty seamless, transitioning from the older data tool to this current tool. And so we knew that a lot of people were downloading tables just to get quick snapshots of the data and to have downloadable tables available to them. So this is taken exactly as was from the older tool. This is National Prisoner Statistics Program data only, where you can download things like year-end custody populations by sex, and this will have national and state level data. And then additionally, there are some special populations. You can look at citizens in custody of state or federal prisons. Down here, you can look by offense, by race, as well as different capacities for prison populations. Moving on to the map query. This is an interactive map tool that's really neat. It's really interesting how much data there is and how much you can do with this. So up in this variable, you'll be able to look at total population, total admissions, total releases from 1975 through 2019. Currently, we are working to update these tools with the most recent data available. So for each of these, you can hover over the state and see a total population for each individual year. Using these click boxes, you can look at rates per 100,000 state residents. You can look at percentage changes, which I'll talk about in 1 minute, and you can always click to show footnotes. All of this data, especially at the state level, has many footnotes. So if you want to get into some deep reading or look at specifics for a certain state, you can absolutely go through and look at footnotes. To look at percentage changes, what you can do here is click the box, view percentage changes, and then you'll be able to highlight a number of years on this scroll bar. And at that time, you can look at rates or total population changes in each of the states for that given time. So in this example, going from 2007 to 2017, I have California kind of highlighted here. There was a 25% decrease in the population with the numbers available for those 2 years. As an example, here we have what this will look like when you pull up footnotes for each of these years. These are available by state and by year, so if you're looking at multiple years, there will be many notes. And here we dig into the advanced query. So this is a place where you can really look at the combined data, you can ask questions, and you can pull specific information if you have state, year, or populations that you're looking to get information on. With this information, there's 3 query types. We have annual counts, offender characteristics, and national characteristics. And these are going to be laid out in that annual counts will be data from NPS only, offender characteristics will be data from NCRP only, and then national characteristics will be the combination where we do the weighted distributions to the NPS totals. For many of these, you can look at admissions, releases, or the total year-end population. In the annual counts, you can choose by sex and then multiple variables. Some of these variables include local jails. This example is local jails at year-end. You can look at inmates under 18. You can look at non-citizens held at year-end. Many different options here. And all of this data, you can look at these tabs, can be exported to Excel with or without footnotes. So once again, many footnotes, you can click to see those. Here's an example of what this would look like to choose, looking at admissions from NPS for parole violators for 2016 through 19 for all states. So these tables, depending on what you choose, can take a minute to load. Looking at multiple years and all states, it'll take a minute to load all this data, especially when you get into characteristics. But all of that data can be exported and used as well. Here's an example of looking at these characteristics taken from the NCRP. If we look at detailed categorization of most serious offense with the year-end population, you can have a table with multiple years, multiple states, looking at those detailed offenses. Some other examples of variables that you can look through are race, ethnicity, maximum sentence length, highest level of education, as well as year of prison release, year of parole eligibility, or a type of prison admission, whether that was a new court commitment or parole violation. And then at this third query type, the national characteristics, this is where we're going to have those weighted totals. So looking at releases for maximum sentence length by the detailed offense levels, these are going to group these maximum sentences into under a year, 1 to 2. So you can have these neat tables that are auto-populated. And then last but not least, once again, resources. Here we have some information on terms and definitions, methodology, frequently asked questions, and supporting documents like white papers behind the collections. A lot of this methodology will discuss the differences and similarities between the NPS and the NCRP, and hopefully would answer any questions you have on the methodology behind how we developed this tool. Thank you very much. I'm going to pass this off to Lexi.
Sorry, I just realized my video is out, but thank you, Danielle. Let me plug that in. There we go. Sorry about that. Hello again. My name is Lexi Thompson. I'm a statistician in the Victimization Statistics Unit at BJS, and I will be talking about the National Crime Victimization Survey Data Dashboard, or NDASH for short. I worked on this dashboard along with some other wonderful colleagues, and I want to acknowledge their work on this. So thank you to Erica Harrell, Grace Kina, John Popham, the team at RTI International, and others who helped make the NDASH possible. During my portion of the presentation, I'll be doing a brief overview of the National Crime Victimization Survey, a summary of how we developed the NDASH, and then we'll spend the bulk of the time on a live demonstration of the tool. So the National Crime Victimization Survey, or NCVS, is the nation's primary source of information on criminal victimization. And what separates the NCVS from other statistics you might see from law enforcement is that we cover both crimes reported and not reported to the police. When we interview our respondents, we ask them if they've been a victim of different types of crimes within the prior 6 months. And then as they report incidents to us, we collect information about each incident that is reported. And the NCVS has been going on since 1973 and is an annual data collection. Our sample is a national sample, but only for persons ages 12 or older, and also only persons living in US households, since it is an address-based sample. So we don't cover people 11 or younger, and then we don't cover populations living in different institutionalized settings, such as correctional facilities. We are a panel survey, which means that we return to our households over a certain period of time, and we conduct 7 interviews with the household over the course of 3.5 years, which means they're being interviewed about every 6 months. It's a self-report survey where we're taking in the information directly from the victims and the criminal victimizations they experienced during those prior 6 months. And then interviews can be conducted both in person and over the telephone. We cover a couple different categories of non-fatal victimizations. So we do not cover murder or homicide, but we do cover other types of non-fatal violent crime, such as rape and sexual assault, robbery, aggravated assault. We also cover personal larceny, and then property crime, including burglary and trespassing, motor vehicle theft, and other types of household theft. In addition to the crime types, we also collect information on victim demographics, such as victim sex, victim age, race and Hispanic origin, so we can look at crime by different subgroups. We also do collect disability information, as well as sexual orientation and gender identity. And then we also collect different incident level characteristics, such as, was the victimization reported to the police? Was a firearm involved? Was the victim injured? And then also the cost of the crime or costs associated with the incident experienced by the victim. I'll now talk about how we developed the NDASH. Before the NDASH, we did have a data tool called the NCVS Victimization Analysis Tool, or NVAT. And the NVAT was a good tool. It allowed data users to look at different incident characteristics and demographic characteristics by different crime types. There's definitely good customization within that tool, but it was a little more simple and only included tables and no graphics. And so when we were thinking about what we wanted for the NDASH, we thought about, okay, how can we keep the NVAT's functionality, but also improve on the tool into this new tool? So we added the visualization element through different charts to display the NCVS estimates. And then we were also thinking about our different audiences, different types of data users, so that we can meet where people were already at, but also expand and broaden our scope of data users. And then continually thinking about ways to create user-friendly solutions to possible questions that people might have. This is a high overview of the different steps that we took as we developed the tool, but there were a couple different teams involved, as I mentioned at the beginning, to where there were staff from the Victimization Statistics Unit, including myself and others. We also communicated with the Technology and Data Management Unit, or TDM, and then RTI International was contracted to help us build the tool and the site. And from the very beginning, we were thinking about there was a lot of different decisions related to the type of content, layout, design, and lots of different decisions to make in terms of scope of data, presentation, and again, content and design. We did multiple rounds of review of the site from various different groups within BGS and outside of BGS. We also did testing to make sure people were understanding the site as we had intended. And then we also worked with the TDM unit to make sure that once the site was done, it would actually be able to run on the BGS website. And the NDASH was officially launched in November of 2021. So it's been a little over 2 years, which is very exciting. Now I'll get to the fun stuff with the live demonstration. Let me share my screen. So this is the home page for the NDASH. And similar to the other tools, like Danielle mentioned, we have the bar across the top here, letting you know your different options for how to use this tool or different ways to use the tool. But also if you scroll down, there's the same links down here for different pages to let you know what is available. We have a tool overview and also a user's guide up here in terms and definitions if you want to learn more about certain subjects within the tool. We also have the quick graphics, which I'll click on to show you. The quick graphics are a pre-selected number of charts that we find people are generally very interested in. And so we want to make sure those were ready for data users just to view immediately on the tool. So for example, here we have the rate of violent victimizations over time from 1993 to 2022. And this gets updated annually as new data come out. Within each graph, there are a couple different features. There's a tooltip as you move your cursor over the graph. And that just gives you more information rather than having to guess, okay, where on the axis this data point is. So for example, in 2002, the rate was 32.1 violent victimizations per 1,000 persons aged 12 or older. There's also a confidence interval, which is also represented by this brownish shaded area on the graph. And then we also display the standard error. For every graphic, it starts with the graphic as you see here, but you can also view the data in a table format, more similar to what we did with the NVAT. You can also download the table into a CSV if that is preferred for you. And then you can also download an image of the chart that is shown here. So you can see we have overall violent crime, we have information by crime type, and also for some victim demographics in the quick graphics, along with all these other categories up here as well. I do want to spend most of my time on the custom graphics. We have a custom graphics homepage in case you're not sure exactly which part of the site you would like to use, depending on the question that you have about NCBS data. We have multi-year trend data, single year, and year to year, which are what they sound like. Multi-year is for looking at data over time. Single year is just data within 1 year. And then year to year is to see 2 different years of data at once and how they may have changed over time. And then within each of those broader views, we have a crime type and a characteristic page. Crime type is generally better if you're wanting to look at a piece of data, but between the different crime types, like comparing something related to rape or sexual assault with a data point for robbery. And then characteristic would be more appropriate if you wanted to look between either different victim or incident characteristics. For example, seeing the comparison of both crimes reported and not reported to police. One caveat I do want to make is that because this is a survey, there is some degree of sampling error with these estimates. And so in our reports, we do significance testing to see if estimates are significantly different from each other. But on this tool, we do not conduct any significance testing. So just because some estimates may be numerically different, that does not mean that they are significantly different. I'm going to also show you the single year comparison crime type page, because I think it shows a lot of the different options very clearly that are also available on the individual pages of this tool. So when you open up a custom graphics page, there's a chart that usually is already displayed for you. So we have rate of victimizations by crime type with all the different violent crime categories. But if you were interested in property crime, you could go to this crime category option under the display settings and change it from personal to property. And you can see as you click different filters and options, the graph will automatically update for you underneath this menu area. So now we can see all the property victimizations and just the rates in 2022. I'm going to go back to personal just for the demonstration. There's a crime type option. So there's a drop-down menu to either check or uncheck different crime types depending on what you are interested in. So I've unchecked a couple of crime types, and now the chart is a bit smaller since there's less data. And then we also have a comparison characteristic. So the comparison characteristic is if you want to see all the different subgroups underneath a particular variable. So if I select victim sex, for example, I now have the rates for these same crime types, but now broken out by male and female. And then that would also be the case. We have race, Hispanic origin, we have marital status, age, lots of different options. On the other side, we have the data filter settings. So rather than displaying both male and female, if we put victim sex in the filter characteristic, we're now filtering for a specific group. So if I have male selected, there's no victimization now here against a female person. Now it's only where the male was the victim. So I can also change it to female if that is what is preferred. And then between all of these different options, you can combine and look at the intersection of certain characteristics. So for example, if I'm focused on female victims of crime, I could come over to the comparison characteristic and choose victim-offender relationship. And so now I can see all the different types of victim-offender relationships that we display, such as intimate partners. So when looking at overall violent victimization, about 25% of those victimizations with a female victim were committed by an intimate partner. So that's just some of the information that you could find on the dashboard. I can also change the year to be something else, since this is the single year view. And then we can change the unit to number of victimizations. We can add confidence intervals. We can also, depending on what you've selected, you can also add a reference line. But that's just a taste of what you can do on the N-Dash. There's a lot of other options. I'm going to return to the slides. These are just pictures of the tool. So I'll skip these. I believe these links are being posted in the chat as well and can also be found on the BGS's website, but Here's a link for the NDASH, the NCVS data collection page if you want to learn more about the survey. You can find all the other data tools on BGS's website. And then, as we'll discuss more at the end, there are different ways to stay updated with BGS.
In terms of my presentation, I do want to give you a brief overview, some background of the survey itself, the 2016 SPY, which is the most recent administration of the survey, because it is the data source for the tool. And then I want to briefly highlight the utility of the SPY app before I turn our attention into the demonstration, the live demonstration of the tool. So in terms of the background of the data source, the survey of prison inmates, this is a sample survey. It represents a cross-section of the U.S. prison population, both state and federal prisoners at a point in time, and the point in time was 2016, the most recent iteration. The survey is conducted periodically among a national sample of persons, both in state and federal prisons. It's conducted periodically because it's a national sample, and given the scale, cost, and burden, we cannot conduct something like this annually like we do with our other annual prison programs that Danielle described. As I stated, the 2016 iteration was the most recent. We just started working on design work for the next SPY. The state portion, the state component of the SPY started in 1974, and the 2016 iteration was the 7th administration of the survey of state prisoners. The federal component started in 1991, and the 2016 administration was the 4th iteration of the federal component of the survey. And since 91, both surveys have been administered together using the same questionnaire and survey protocols. Like the NDASH presentation that Lexi just gave in terms of the NCVS data, these also are self-reported data that we do collect through personal interviews, which the mode of interviewing is computer-assisted personal interviewing, or CAPI, where after we select sampled facilities, we send a team of interviewers into the facilities to interview the respondents in person using a laptop. They read the survey questions aloud to the respondents. The respondents provide their responses verbally to the field interviewer, and the interviewer enters their data into the laptop. Now, in terms of SPY and advantages, one of the advantages of SPY is it covers a variety of topics. And you will see that I will show that more and demonstrate that in a minute. But that also is a slight limitation of the survey, as users have identified, because we are limited by time. The interview's got to remain a reasonable length so we can maximize response and data quality and minimize burden on both the facilities and the respondents within those facilities. So we don't have the luxury of delving into any one topic in great detail. So the SPY does cover a variety of topics. In terms of the goals with the estimates, I think it's important to mention that the SPY is designed to produce national estimates of adults 18 or older in U.S. prisons, both state and federal prisons, and then we also stratified by biological sex, so we can produce representative estimates of both males and females within state prisons and males and females within federal prisons. The 2016 SPY yielded about 364 participating facilities and 25,000 completed interviews among those respondents who participated. Now, a secondary goal, so in the tool, you're going to see in a minute, those reflect national estimates. A secondary goal in 2016 was to produce jurisdiction level estimates for jurisdictions with the largest prison populations. And this is almost by default because the prison populations were so large that you had to sample enough respondents within those states that they were representative of those jurisdictions. And there's 3 from 2016 that have self-representing samples. That's the Federal Bureau of Prisons, I already mentioned, Texas, and California. Otherwise, the SPY sample cannot be used to produce state-level or jurisdiction-level estimates. Let's turn our attention quickly. I just want to highlight a couple things about the data analysis tool. BGS did develop the tool with Apt Associates, Inc. through a cooperative agreement. They were instrumental in developing this first tool for the SPY. I want to point out that not only does the SPY enhance access, or not only does it modernize access to the 2016, or the tool modernize access to the 2016 SPY data with data visualizations, but it increases or enhances access because it allows users of all technical skill sets to analyze the data and create their own custom visualizations. The SPY is a lengthy, it's a 60-minute interview. There's hundreds of questions. It's a complex survey. That's why we use a computer to route through the survey. And there's complex skip logic. It takes a lot of effort to be able to analyze the data from the SPY and account for that skip logic to ensure you're producing valid estimates from the survey. Well, the tool does all of that. With the variables that you can select within the tool, all of that is accounted for. So I think that's the most important aspect, is that it does enhance access to all kinds of data users. I want to highlight here, the blue URL here is just the BJS homepage. From the data tab, you can then scroll down to data analysis tools, and like Danielle and Lexi had talked about, you can access all of the tools from that page. This is the URL, direct URL for the tool. You can type that into your browser and you'll be taken right to the tool. And this is just a screenshot of the overview. So now I want to turn our attention to the tool itself. I also want to note that my demonstration today is going to be brief given the time constraints, but there is a more detailed demonstration of the tool, a video on the BJS website, both on the data analysis tool page that on the BJS website, and also the SPY data collection page, as well as the BJS YouTube channel. Okay, so now we are looking at the SPY-DAT. On the home page, you see there's a brief overview that explains just the tool itself and its functionality, and then the second paragraph just highlights the data source, which we just talked about, the 2016 SPY. And then you have two paths that you can explore for the tool. This first option is custom charts. We're going to come back to that in 1 second. But we also have key charts similar to the CSAT and N- tools, where we have these pre-selected charts that really just highlight some of the key statistics that the SPY can produce. And you can see here we have about 10 of those. The charts combine both state and federal prisoners. And one thing unique about SPY is that because it is self-report data, we can collect information directly from respondents on topics that you can't necessarily obtain through administrative collections, like the NPS or NCRP that Danielle highlighted previously. So the SPY is very important to fulfill our prisoner population portfolio. So I want to show you some functionality of the charts. I think, Lexi, it's similar to kind of the N- and the CSAT, where you first, in terms of the primary statistic, you see in the bars, you see the percentages. Those are the primary statistics presented in the tool. If you hover over the bar, the tooltip will pop up and it will provide additional statistics, including the standard error of that percent, given that we're talking about a sample survey here, and also the weighted count of that percent. You also have the option here, and the menu option here at the top right of each chart, to display or hide footnotes. Those footnotes provide important contextual information about the variable interest in the chart and to help you kind of interpret those results. You can turn them on or off. We have them turned off for the pre-selected chart simply because it's a cleaner look, because the number of footnotes can vary by chart. You also have the option, similar to other tools, to download an image of the chart itself. That's through a PDF. So you can see, you can select that PDF option. It should appear up here at the top right of your screen. And you can open the PDF and you can see the image. And along with the title and the image of the chart, you get some general footnotes that may or may not apply to the chart. I'll explain a little bit more about those in a minute. You also get the source information and the date and time that the report was generated. The other option to download results is a CSV file of the estimates in the tooltip and the metadata. So if you select the download CSV option, it should appear upper right-hand corner. You can select it. And again, you see the estimates here. I'm sorry. I think you may have not been, if you weren't seeing that, but we can talk about it. Anyway, the CSV file has the estimates and all of the metadata, the chart information, the source information, similar to the chart image as well. So you have two options to download, either the data or the image itself. And lastly, let's go delve into the custom charts, which I really think is the most unique option you have here for the SPY-DAT. So first, you're forced to select 3 standard filters, either a filter for the population of interest, So we have state and federal prisoners combined, which represents the U.S. total prison population. You can also select federal prisoners specifically or state prisoners specifically. Once you select a population of interest, you have to select a topic. So we have 5 topics that are covered here in the SPI that are included in the tool. Demographic characteristics, and when you select the topic, you'll get about 12 variables of demographic characteristics that you can explore. You can also change the topic if you're interested in criminal justice characteristics. The tool will populate the variables that are organized under the criminal justice section. And there's about 12 more variables that you can analyze. We have a socioeconomic characteristics section that has about 13 variables that can be explored through the tool. We have a physical and mental health section. There's about 7 or so variables that can be analyzed. And lastly, we have a substance use section where we have about 4 different variables that can be analyzed from the tool. So for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to select socioeconomic characteristics, state and federal prisoners, and I'm going to look at parents of a minor child. You select the button to view custom charts, and the tool will populate the first chart, which is based on the 3 standard filters that you just selected. It also includes the footnote as a default. You still have the option to display and hide the footnotes. And you also have the option to download the chart image as a PDF or the statistics and metadata as a CSV file. You can see at the top of the tool, there are these navigation instructions, just provide you some basic instructions about how to navigate the custom charts view. Now you see this more filters option here on the right. By default, the group 1 filter is age at time of interview. That's talking about the respondent at the time of the interview, how old they were, and the respondent's race and ethnicity at the time of the interview. So the chart automatically populates with the tool automatically populates with 2 additional charts. This variable interest, parent of a minor child, by the group 1 variable, age, that's the second chart you see here. And then the third chart is the variable interest, parent of a minor child, by the group 2 default variable, which is race and ethnicity. And the tool also provides a table that provides the cross of all 3 variables here at the bottom automatically. You have the option to filter on different group variables. For instance, biological sex, this first chart will not change because you're keeping the key variable as parent of a minor child. Say you change group 2 to offense, the chart 2 and 3 will update with those new variables or those new filters, and so will the table of the cross of all 3 variables. You also have the option to filter on specific categories of the group 1 variable, kind of like the N-dash. So say you're interested in just females in state and federal prisons who are in for a violent offense. The more restrictive you get in terms of your filters, the less information presented on the tool because less information is needed to present the key estimates that you're asking for here. So you see now if you select on specific categories within the group 1 and group 2, you're only going to get 1 chart. You have this option clear filters, which really just clears the group 2 variable and group 1 variable filters back to the default of all. You can see there's some metadata here on the right where you have 2 different dates. The first date, data updated, is the date that the database was updated, and typically that doesn't happen frequently. For instance, when we conduct a new next SPI, if we add those estimates to this tool, you'll see that date change. And then the report generated date is just when you're generating these reports. So it will be today, obviously, March 13th, the day you're running these queries. And lastly, you see 3 general footnotes that also appear in the exports. Let me see if I can find one. So change this to federal prisoners. Oh, and by the way, as soon as you change the population, the tool will auto-populate with the new population. So now it's just focused on federal prisoners. And if you change the variable of interest, the tool will auto-populate with those new results. Let's say I'm interested in federal prisoners who are female. Okay, you're going to see sometimes you're going to get basically a non-bar in the chart with a tilde next to it. And if you put your scroll over the bar, you're going to see a note that pops up that says the estimate is based on fewer than 10 sample cases. And that's because BGS has determined that to be the threshold to report reliable estimates. If we have less than 10 sampled unweighted cases in that category, you're not going to see an estimate there. There are also some charts that have a dash next to them. That just means that for those particular characteristics or filters, we had no sampled cases. So for that particular characteristic, you're also not going to see an estimate presented in the tool. And there will be a footnote or a note that pops up in the tooltip that explains that as well. And then we have this general note that really applies to any chart in the tool that just details do not sum to more than 100% due to rounding. I know folks sometimes like to check BJS's math, and if you try to sum all of these categories, sometimes it sums to a little bit more than 100%, 100.1, 100.2, or less than 100%. So we just have that general footnote to remind users that we expect that at times. Now you can select this return to home page. To go back to the home page, I'm going to demonstrate, just show you some of the supporting materials, but you can also get them from the custom charts view here. You would return the home page, and you have these supporting materials similar to the other tools. We have terms and definitions, and you have a number of the terms in the tool. Usually those are the key variables that we've identified them and provided their definitions. And if we reported them in a BGS product, we also provide the link with that definition to that report. So you can click on that URL, and it will open the report in a new page from the tool. We also have a user's guide, similar to the other tools. There's about 10 sections in the user's guide that explain, the information in the tool, how to use the tool, how to interpret the results, how to cite the results, how to contact BJS for more information or questions. But one thing I do want to highlight in the user's guide is in section 4 for the custom charts. We provide screenshots to explain how to explore and filter on results, similar to what we just did today. But we also include a section of how to help users interpret the results. The first chart is usually easy to interpret, but when you start crossing the variables in the second and third chart, and then of course the table, it might get a little complicated, and users may have questions about what the denominator is and how to interpret the statistic. So we provide some examples in the user's guide to help users interpret those results. And lastly, we also have supporting documents where we link users back to the SPY data collection page on the BJS website, where there's more information, and you can also find the questionnaire on that data collection page. There's also a section for the data analysis tools that not only provides a link to the SPY.dat, but also the instructional video that I referred to earlier. And there's a tool under supporting documents, a link under supporting documents that takes users to the NACJD, National Archive of Criminal Justice Data page, specifically the 2016 SPY page, where the data and documentation have been archived if you're interested in doing your own analysis of the results. And I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to Ado.
Thank you, Lauren, and all the presenters. That was great. All really good information. We have a few questions. We have just under 10 minutes to go over them, so I'll read some of the questions off, and then we'll stop here in about 10 minutes. I think actually the first I can probably answer. It's directed towards me, but it's a recurring question. I think Lauren actually answered it on her during her presentation. So one of the questions was, for each of these dashboards, is there downloadable data incident level or aggregate? And then also the data download option is limited to aggregate data, but not individual incidents, correct? So was the question. So to answer that question, the data that you'll be downloading from the dashboards is basically what's queried, so the aggregate level. But if you wanted that individual level data, you have to go through our NACJD process. I can drop the link for that in the chat, but that will allow you to go through, especially for like FJSP, there's some data security steps you have to go through, but that will give you that individual level data. Obviously PII is removed, but the data that we're talking about being that's downloaded from a dashboard is kind of at that aggregate level. The next question is directed towards Shelby. So for JEET, how granular is the expenditure data? For example, can you see the healthcare expenditures by Department of Adult Corrections in North Carolina?
Yeah, so for right now, the data is only as granular as you see it on the dashboard. So it's mostly aggregates and sums across those different kind of higher level categories. We hope to have more data that goes into that granularity soon, but at this time, we don't have that incorporated into the JEET.
Thank you. The next question is off the CSAT. So precisely how are ethnic and racial identity data collected on both state DOC and federal levels?
Yeah, so I think this will probably be different for each of our collections, or there'll be a variety here, but for the NCRP and the NPS, since we're collecting that data from the state's Department of Corrections, that probably depends on how the state collects it. I'm assuming there would be a bit of a mix of self-identification and observer identification, but I can't precisely say how each state is collecting that data.
Yeah. The next is for Lexi in regards to INDASH. In any of the data sets, do you include comfort items allowed on stand your ground data? So they give courthouse dog, therapy dog, and stuffed animal blanket. Are you familiar with those? Might be terminology that's.
I mean, I'm familiar with those. I'm familiar with therapy dogs, but I'm not exactly sure what this question is asking. Sorry.
Okay. Well, and then will you have another one? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think any of our data, so they're asking about what's available when you're on the stand. And I don't think we collect.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. Because for the NCVS, we're interviewing victims in their homes or over the telephone, and we do ask about, if it was reported, and certain follow-up questions about what happened after the incident, but we don't get that granular.
Thank you. You have one more question, Lexi. So are there any plans to include sexual orientation and gender identity as personal characteristics on the dashboard in the future?
Yeah, so I also answered this in the chat, but I do think it's worth repeating to the group. Not at this time, specifically with certain variables, including the sexual orientation and gender identity variables. Sometimes the sample sizes are not enough to generate reliable estimates at an annual level, and especially with the NDASH, because you can cross so many different variables, we want to make sure that most of the estimates that are showcased on the tool are statistically reliable. And there was a sexual orientation and gender identity report released back in 2022 called Violent Victimization by Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity 2017 to 2020. And all those estimates in that report are including 3 years of data. So that's a little bit about why it may be difficult to include something like SOGI characteristics in the tool, at least the way that the NDASH is constructed. But in addition to this report on the BGS website, you can also download the data files, as Avo mentioned, at NACJD, and you can run your own analysis. The SOGI data variables are on the data files for the NCVS there.
Great, thank you for that, Lexi. A question for you, Lauren. What is the underlying hood of the dashboard? So like what software, is it Tableau based, or what software is used?
Actually, it's high charts, which is what CSAT is based on too. We started designing this a few years ago before we started using Tableau more here at BJS. So it is based in high charts, high chart software. One thing I did want to ask about SOGI too is there are SOGI variables in the SPY tool, both sexual orientation and gender identity.
Thank you. Another question is, do you have an estimated year of release and the year that it will cover?
Is that to me, Abo?
Yes, sorry.
Year of release of what? I'm not seeing that.
This says, do you have an estimated year of release and year that it will cover for SPY?
For the next SPY.
Oh, the next SPY. Excuse me. I don't think we have a specific date. I think we're aiming for maybe 2027. We just started recently with this fiscal year design project for the next SPY. So nothing is set in stone, but we're trying to stay around every 10 or so years, depending on other collections in the field that are also surveying those same respondents of ours.
I think we have time maybe for one or two more questions. This is in the Q&A. Anyone who can answer this? Are there plans to develop more juvenile system dashboards for any of your units? Is that any of them that are focused on juvenile justice system dashboards? The units talk about that at all? I don't think so in my unit as well.
Yeah, I think most of our collections are, for the most part, focusing on adults.
I do think that the Office of yeah, sorry, go ahead, Lexi.
Sorry about that. Yeah, there's not a plan right now for a juvenile specific dashboard, I would say related to the NCBS, but age is one of the variables that we do have on the tool, and the youngest that we do, there are two age groups, 12 to 14 and 15 to 17. So you can use the N- in some ways to look at juvenile victimization.
Thank you for that. And I think we're right at 2:30 here, so I think we might wrap it up. Appreciate the questions and everyone's attendance. If there's any follow-up questions, if I didn't get to any, please feel free to reach out to us at askbjs@usdoj.gov, and be more than happy to follow up with you. I'll turn over to Dale for some closing remarks. Thank you, guys.
Great, thanks so much. So on behalf of the Bureau of Justice Statistics and our panelists, thank you for joining today's webinar. This will end today's presentation.